Hey guys, today Travis and I are down in Southern California dodging the raindrops to take a look at the newest and the biggest subcompact luxury crossover in America. This is the all-new Acura ADX, and this has the Lexus UX and the Volvo XC40 very squarely in its sights. But unlike the European competition, the ADX is a significantly better value. There are obviously some compromises for the lower starting price, but this is about $6,000 less starting than the Volvo XC40. And if you want key features like the high-end audio system, this is actually one of the best in this segment, or things like adaptive cruise control, this is significantly less expensive than even that Volvo, not to mention the Mercedes. So let's just dive into the ADX, talk about why you might want one of these, or why you might still want to spend the extra for one of those European competitors. If you're looking for a small luxury crossover that's big on style, you probably want to take a look at the ADX because this looks a lot like the rest of the Acura lineup and therefore certainly more aggressive in the front-end design than most of the European competition. This is obviously the smallest and least expensive Acura, so we find a little bit less detail going on around the grille, but it's very much the same style grille that we find in the larger and more expensive Acuras. We have the full LED headlights, which are standard with the chicane turn signals. I think that's a really attractive look. Also, again, a bit more aggressive than we find certainly in something like the Volvo XC40. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking a lot about the Lexus UX because I think a lot of folks are going to be directly cross-shopping a Lexus to an Acura, but also that Volvo XC40 because it is actually the best seller in the subcompact luxury crossover segment. We should probably talk about that. At just under 186 inches long, this is 11 inches longer than the Volvo, about 8 inches longer than the Lexus. And if you're watching this video outside the United States, you might be thinking to yourself, hang on, that's not subcompact. Well, segmentation in the luxury segment especially really seems to have more to do with price and feature set than direct size. So yes, this is one of the largest entries in this segment, but we'll just go ahead and call it subcompact for the purposes of this video. Now, today we're taking a look at the very top end trim of ADX. So we have the widest tire size. These are a 235/45 R19. And of course, we get a different wheel than you find in the rest of the lineup. The curb weight is relatively low, especially compared to something like the RDX, but this is one of the heavier entries in the subcompact crossover segment. Acura says that this is sort of the SUV corollary to the Acura Integra, and you can definitely see a lot of Integra in the style of the ADX. Moving to the back, we have full LED taillights as well. Definitely a nice touch. I'm going to go ahead and press the brake pedal here so you can see what the brake lights look like. I think that Acura did an excellent job with the lighting design, just as we've seen in other Acuras. And again, I love the amber turn signal. What I'm not loving quite so much is this particular slope on the hatch, or liftback or sportback, whatever you want to call it. It just looks a little unfinished. Now, if you get the Acura accessory, there is another spoiler that they put right here, and it kind of just visually breaks up that rear end. Coming down to the bottom, we find dual exhaust tips in every model. That's also kind of a nice touch. And a little bit surprising given what's going on under the hood. Purring along under this hood is one of the smallest engines in this segment. It's a 1.5-liter 4-cylinder turbo that's used in a variety of different Honda and Acura products. Under this hood, it produces 190 horsepower, 179 pound-feet of torque, and it's mated to a continuously variable automatic transmission. This is one of the few CVTs available in the luxury segment, period, and the only one in this segment, because if you're taking a look at a Lexus UX, it's a hybrid system, and that is the one thing I would love to see under this hood, would actually be Honda's 2-motor hybrid system from the CR-V or some of the other products, because that system is more powerful than what we find under this hood, and it would have more directly competed with the Lexus UX or something like the Alfa Romeo Tonale, which is a plug-in hybrid. Performance, it is definitely below average for the subcompact crossover segment, because something like the Volvo XC40 starts with a 2-liter turbo and significantly more power. On the other hand, we get better fuel economy in this model, 27 or 28 miles per gallon, depending on whether you choose front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is an option, and that is part of why this starts $5,600 less expensive than the Volvo. That is one important thing to keep in mind, the price tag on the ADX. This is significantly less expensive than average, and that's why it's also a little less peppy than average. The thing is, at least for me, The amount of power and the performance that we get in the ADX is a little bit at odds with the really aggressive looks, which I think are fantastic. I do think this is the best looking entry in this segment. But as always, let us know what you think down there in the comment section. My fingers are starting to lose feeling, so it's time to check out the interior. Now, although this starts just over $36,000, keep in mind that we're driving the top-end model, and this has the most adjustable driver's seat. Most notably, the 4-way adjustable lumbar support, that's only going to be in this top-end trim. But it's pretty roomy inside, and I found this driver's seat to be pretty comfortable so far today. With this moonroof, the moonroof is optional. I have about 1.5 inches of headroom left with the seat all the way down on the ground. So if you're a taller person, you might want to check out some of the boxier options. We have a heated steering wheel here, and it tilts and telescopes manually. There's also a 2-position memory over there on the driver's door. That is optional as well. And it's worth noting that the front passenger seat does not have adjustable lumbar support. Now let's check out the back seat with that front seat adjusted for me. Back here, we definitely have a decent amount of room. That's one of the advantages of this being bigger than average. We have more legroom than average, especially versus the Lexus UX. This actually has one of the roomiest cabins in this segment. Scooting all the way over to this side, you'll notice, again, a reasonable amount of headroom back here, like in the front, but there are going to be a few roomier options. However, yeah, it's actually pretty comfortable. Rear seats, they fold in a 60-40 fashion. And as you see, seat bottom cushion actually scoots down a little bit to give you more cargo area in the back. However, I kind of wonder what this would be like if they could have put a hybrid battery pack under that seat. Now here in the center, we get some USB-C charge ports. You won't find those in every trim. And then we find rear seat air vents, which you will find in every trim. Let's talk child seats now. The latch anchors are easy to find because we don't have any covers or any Velcro over them. That's a really nice touch. Let's see how much room we have in here. In our typical test, what we do is, handy thing if you're at a dealership and you're trying to find out whether child seats will fit, measure 11 inches up from the bottom, put that driver's seat right where you want to go. And for especially those larger rear-facing seats, you're going to need 29 inches of room. But hey presto, we actually have exactly 29 inches in here with the front seat adjusted for me at 6 feet tall. So this is one of the few entries in this segment where you could put a larger rear-facing child seat and an average adult up front with no problem. On the downside, shoulder belt for the center section comes out of the ceiling. That reduces cargo practicality a little bit, and it does mean that if you plan on putting a child seat right here in the center, then it is going to be slightly skewed to one side, although these buckles do not interfere with the outboard seat belts. That's also a nice touch. When it comes to cargo capacity, that's going to depend on the options you select, most notably whether you get the moonroof or not. Just over 23 or just over 24 cubic feet of cargo space is going to be found back here. That's a little bit lower than I had thought given the general dimensions, but look at how the cargo area opening is shaped. It's a little bit of a pyramid, I guess you'd say. However, you still can put quite a bit of roller luggage back here. These larger 22-inch roller bags, for instance, you can definitely put them in that position, line up some other bags in the back. It's actually a pretty practical cargo area. Let's go ahead and see what is under this load floor. However, I have to put all of our luggage out in the rain. We're down here in the San Diego area, headed to the airport after this and spilling things all over the ground. But hey, we'll pick that up later. Under the floor, we have a foam divider with some extra cargo slots. We find our jack right there, and hey presto, a spare tire, something that we do not find in the vast majority of the competition. And logically, that is where some of the cargo space goes, because if you take a look at an XC40, not only is there no spare tire, there's nowhere to put a spare tire. And here, you have one. As we take a spin around the interior, keep in mind that we are in the top end version. Up here we have a sunglass holder. Let's check out the sun visors. They do slide to the side, and we have vanity lights and mirrors on both sides. Since this has the up-level Bang & Olufsen audio system, which we'll talk about in a bit, we have speaker grills there in the ceiling. The moonroof you'll find in the A-Spec and the A-Spec Advanced trim. It's kind of a panoramic design. It goes to just about the rear passenger's heads. There's Travis there in the back, demoing the headroom. He actually has a reasonable amount of headroom there, but keep in mind the way that moonroof is cut, it does kind of feel like it's right in front of your forehead. Moving up to the front, we have height adjustable shoulder belts and height adjustable head restraints for the driver and front passenger. This trim is offered in 3 different interior color combinations: charcoal, red, and this ivory and blue seat trim, which I think is the most attractive, although I really like the red interior as well. This is really notable because I don't recall any Acura having this microfiber suede insert on the seat, and that wraps around the seat bottom cushion, the seat back cushion, and the front doors as well. It really dresses this interior up. And again, I hope this makes it to other Acura models. We have moderate bolsters on the seat back, relatively flat seat bottom cushions. This is the only trim with real leather, the A-Spec with the advanced trim, but not the only trim with ventilated seats. You'll get the ventilated seats in the mid-level trim with the imitation leather upholstery. Moving over to the doors, we find a soft touch armrest, soft touch inserts at the top of the door, but a reasonable amount of hard plastics as well. We have this black shiny texture going on here, or trim piece rather, that starts plain and then moves to a textured element down there on the door. That's an interesting touch. I kind of wish it was all textured because that shiny black part is probably going to show scratches over time. Then we start seeing the Bang & Olufsen speakers. Bang & Olufsen logo there on the door, and then the very distinctive tweeter up there on the A-pillar. This is quite simply one of the best audio systems in this segment. We've really been enjoying listening to this all day long in the ADX, and if you were going to buy an entry in this segment simply because of the audio system, I'd say this is actually probably the best one to make that choice with. If you get the red interior, then we get a larger red insert in the dashboard, which does really look cool. In this model, we have the ivory accent insert there. This section is not shiny black plastic. It's kind of, I guess, imitation brushed metal is probably how I would describe that. We have the egg grate style air vents in the dashboard, bin style glove compartment below that. I suspect an 11-inch tablet computer would fit inside. And speaking of tablet computers, we have a 9-inch LCD perched on the dashboard, kind of like a tablet computer. That is positioned just in front of that Bang & Olufsen center speaker there. As you can see, this supports Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and this has the Google Connected Infotainment option. This is only found in the top-end trim. If you get the other trims, we get a very similar screen and very similar software, but without the built-in Google connectivity feature. Down here, we find more of those egg crate style air vents, dual-zone automatic climate control, buttons for the heated and ventilated seats, 2 USB-C ports, a USB-C charge-only port, and an interface port for CarPlay or Android Auto or whatever else you might want to plug in there. We have a Qi wireless charging mat. There's Travis's Android phone down there. We have one cup holder here with kind of a phone slot on the side. That's handy because you can stick other stuff in there. In case you're wondering, this is what the key looks like. It's the pretty typical Acura key. We don't have engine start remotely on every trim. That is an option that you'll find as you work your way up. Down here we have drive mode buttons, the individual drive mode button, the drive mode toggle. As we see in other Acura models, those drive modes are highlighted by the animations on the infotainment screen. Back down here, we find a button to disable the auto start-stop system, hill descent control, auto brake hold, and instead of a hunt and peck shifter, we find more of a traditional console shifter, sport mode back there. We then have another cup holder. This is a really big, really deep cup holder, so for some of those larger drinks, you might want to use this one rather than the one in front of the shifter. We then have a padded center armrest and a big storage area inside there. There's a decent amount of storage going on in this interior, although one thing that Travis really wanted me to point out is that this side of the instrument cluster on the passenger side is really hard. It is wrapped in the same material as the doors, but it doesn't have any padded backing to it. I like the look of this stitched component and the fact that we get extra contrast in the center console, but from this view you can see that that center console flares a little aggressively on the passenger side, and that's why passengers tend to bop their knees on that. Moving over to the driver's side, we find a partial LCD instrument cluster. Well, maybe I should describe this as almost full, because the only non-LCD gauges are the engine temperature and the fuel level. The theme of this gauge changes depending on the drive mode, so you can see we get different color accents there, and we also get the active safety information in the center, album art, etc. Moving out from there, we find a pretty typical Acura steering wheel, somewhat flat bottom there, paddles on the back. Yes, it does have a CVT, but we still get paddle shifters here. We have volume up, down, track forward, backward over there, and the controls for the standard adaptive cruise control on that side. Heated steering wheel button, that's down there in the center. Now let's check out some of the controls for the Bang & Olufsen audio system. This is definitely a big reason to get the ADX if you're into music. We have some new controls here, the Bassonic tone and surround control. Instead of a traditional graphic equalizer, you can see right here, if I hover this over, we have treble plus, bass plus, treble minus, bass minus. So this is how you adjust the sound of the system. Bright, energetic, warm, relaxed, etc. It's an interesting twist on the usual controls. Over here you can adjust the 3D surround, but that's not the only thing you can adjust, because you can separately adjust the center speaker volume and the roof speaker volume. The rear speakers, again, are just above the driver and front passenger heads. You can adjust the audio zone, full vehicle, driver only, front only, rear only. This just seems to enable and disable speakers. It's not adjusting the sound quite as much as we see in some vehicles out there. And then we get the typical speed volume compensation. We don't have the equipment here to analyze the accuracy of this audio system, but at least to my ear, this is one of the best systems in this segment. You do find pretty nice audio systems in the European competition, but you're going to be paying an awful lot more for them than in this Acura. All right, Travis, are you ready to get the pulse quickening ADX out on the road?
Boy, am I ready.
Let's put it in sport mode here.
Are you sure?
We'll go sport mode and then sport on that.
Shift. Okay. Did it go into sport mode?
You know, we're getting there.
Yes. There we go.
And
Momentum.
60.
All right.
9.5 seconds.
Yeah, it's not fast.
No. I was actually expecting a bit more with 190 horsepower, I have to admit.
Yeah, I mean, this engine is used in a couple other Honda products, and they're a little bit quicker than this, and this isn't that much heavier. So I'm not quite sure why we're so down, but this is not going to be the fastest in the segment. If you're looking for performance, that's not where you're going to find it here.
In fact, if I go back in our recent test list, this is the slowest in the segment, which I was not expecting exactly. That used to be the Lexus UX,
right,
but it got a bit of a performance bump lately with its hybrid system.
Yep.
And UX is standard hybrid, mind you.
Yeah.
This is going to be slower than that Lexus UX. That is the one thing that if I could change, I would definitely change in here.
Yeah, it's not just the performance, but I think dropping that hybrid system is the answer.
Yes,
right now,
I would
obviously,
agree.
this is built or based off of the Honda HR-V, which gets a less powerful engine, which is obviously not what we would want in this experience.
Honda says it is Integra related.
Yes, okay. And it is, but the Integra has a little bit more power than this.
Yes.
And I wouldn't mind that either.
And the Integra is a little bit quicker, 0 to 60.
Yep.
It could be because we're driving the all-wheel drive version and there may be some different tuning. I will caution everybody out there also, we are driving a pre-production model, so it's possible there could be a change for the production version.
Yeah.
Although I would suspect it's going to be basically what we're driving here.
Definitely in the wheelhouse. So hybrid system, Acura, if you're listening, we're interested.
There is that 200 horsepower two-motor hybrid system.
Yep.
Back on the numbers though, we have not been able to 60 to 0 test because as you can see, it is very wet outside and just wouldn't really be fair to this to 60 to 0 test. I suspect it's going to be right in line with most of the competition. We have relatively wide tires in this A-spec model for this segment, 235 width. You will find some wider tires in some of the European competitors, but not really for the price tag of the ADX.
Yeah.
Handling, I think, is something that Acura did a really good job on. The suspension tuning, the steering tuning, etc., it really does feel good out on the winding roads.
Yeah, it's nice and agile, pretty nimble. It's a momentum machine, right? Because it's not going to be one that you're going to be able to do a lot of throttle down and off we go. But if you're carving up the back roads, as long as you keep that speed up, this is plenty of fun.
Yeah, you know, I'd rather drive a slow car fast than a fast car slow in a way. And this is sort of that vibe. It does have a CVT that sometimes I wish was just more CVT, because if you notice, if we slow down here, this CVT is trying to imitate a stepped automatic transmission. That's part of why I think we get the 0 to 60 time that we do. So if we take off from a stop again, you definitely hear the shifts. You don't get a whole lot until about 5,000 RPM. That's where you really start to feel the pull, but then we get those imitation shifts and it loses a bit of steam as it's doing that.
Yeah, we can hear it, not so much feel it, right? It's not a huge change here, and it's not making a huge difference, but in that sense, then why have it at all?
Yeah.
And moreover, for me, I love a good paddle shifter, but in a car that has gears. I feel a little silly with paddle shifters in a car with no gears.
Yeah, these are as useful as paddle shifters on a Poodle, but they do shift the transmission actually faster than, like, you know, some of the Infinities with CVTs that used to happen in the past. So if I just put this in the regular drive mode, floor it, we get what feels more like a traditional shift than in a lot of CVTs out there. If I start driving more calmly, the transmission will eventually settle down, because of course there's, you know, some construction on the road here. Be kind, move over. So now we're back at 2,000 RPM. If I floor it, pops up to 4,000 pretty quickly. We get something similar, of course, with the paddles. Hopefully everybody out there can hear this, but yeah, they're just a little slow.
Yeah, to me it seems senseless to a point, right? It's not egregious, but I don't get it.
I mean, I live in a hilly area. I
Yeah.
find myself actually using them even on cars with CVTs just to, get a little extra engine braking going downhill.
Sure.
So, it's useful there, but it's not a sporty paddle shifter.
And I will say that's one of the things I would not want to do in the ADX is a lot of hill climbing. This is not a terribly powerful engine, and it is a CVT, and it does have to work to get you up those hills. And the biggest thing that I was looking for is how is this going to be an improvement, not on the Integra, but on the Honda counterpart that it's built off of. And I was looking for more sound deadening than I think we're getting here. So climbing is going to be one of those things that you'll notice, I think, more than you might want to in a premium segment.
Yeah, I will say, I think that road noise is well controlled, but we do certainly get that 4-cylinder sound in the cabin. And again, yeah, because we have relatively little torque in this engine compared to some of those European options. So the Volvo is almost 260 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah.
Pretty decent jump over this bigger displacement engine. You're going to be hearing the engine working a little more in the hills, but it is actually quite fun and pretty efficient. This is more efficient than just about all of the non-hybrid options out there.
Yep.
Tricky bit though is that we do have hybrid and plug-in hybrid alternatives to choose from.
I know, and I think that is still the big miss. None of the Honda Acura models have any plug-in hybrids at the moment, except for the one-off CR-V hydrogen, which technically counts, but barely. I'd love to see more of that because we obviously would get a performance bump in the hybrid. We could also see a bigger performance bump in a plug-in hybrid, and that would push this on a higher price point, but I feel like it'd be worth the money.
You're definitely going to notice in those sort of entering traffic situations, it takes a little bit to get going. Now we should probably get real for just one moment. 0 to 60 is not the be-all and end-all.
Nope.
People in this segment are not buying an XC40 because of its 0 to 60 time specifically. And this does everything else really well. It's roomy in the back seat. It's got a big practical cargo area. It's fun to drive on a winding mountain road on the weekend. It can get you from A to B more efficiently than those other competitors, except for the hybrids.
Right.
So I'd say it's a really solid option. So for people that are watching that thinks maybe we're being too hard on it, I will say that everything else is done really well, but maybe that one thing sticks out maybe just a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, when you sit inside of it, it feels nice. When you look at it, when you're coming out from the parking garage, it looks good. So it's going to check a lot of those boxes. It's just one of that performance isn't going to be it. But for myself, if this is the segment that I'm looking at, performance is fun, but rarely do I get to use it. Right, so momentum is something I get to carry a lot more than 0 to 60s. This is a whole lot of fun to drive. I would love taking this on a road trip. It could fit 4 adults comfortably without any issue, and they'd enjoy their time in here. I really like the sound system.
Yes.
And I don't want to have to buy an ultra premium car to get a great sound system.
Yeah, and we may need to use the sound system because I don't think we're going to be able to pass this hay truck.
No.
So, and even if we did the engine, you'd hear a lot of engine noise. So maybe we just crank up the tunes.
Yeah.
If you want to test drive an ADX for yourself, reach out to your Acura dealer now because these should be on lots between March and April 2025. So right around the time that you're watching this video. The base model is not going to be as expensive as most of the competition, but it's very well equipped. $36,350 is where the ADX starts. Add $2,000 for all-wheel drive. That's a lot less expensive than an XC40. That's going to be about $5,600 more than this, although all-wheel drive is standard on that Volvo, as is a heap more power under the hood and better 0 to 60 times. But really, the feature set and the standard content in the ADX is the story here, because we get adaptive cruise control, the aggressive lane centering software, etc., standard in every model, and those features are by and large optional in most of the competition. Now, if you want the fog lights, the ventilated seats, and the moonroof that we have on this model, you have to step up to the A-Spec trim for $39,350. That's the price for the front-wheel drive model. And if you want everything that you've seen today, you have to go all the way up to the A-Spec with Advance for $43,350, sorry, and then add the $2,000 all-wheel drive option. That's going to get you front and rear parking sensors. I am surprised that we don't get at least rear parking sensors in other trims, but the backup camera is standard. We get the rain sensing wipers, which we have definitely been using a lot today. The Google connected infotainment system. Apparently my tongue is also frozen like my hands are. We get the leather upholstery that you see in here, but importantly, the Bang & Olufsen audio system is only in the A-Spec with Advanced trim. And if I could ask for just 2 changes on the ADX, it would be for the Bang & Olufsen audio system to be a standalone option in the A-Spec trim, because it is fantastic. It is one of the best audio systems that I've experienced in this segment. The Burmester audio systems in some of the Mercedes models are going to be just about as nice, but they're going to cost you significantly more. The top-end audio system in the XC40, actually, I don't think is any better than this one, and it's going to be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 more, depending on the version of the XC40 you look at. And the Lexus UX has nothing on this audio system in any version. If you're looking for an attractive, sporty-looking, nice handling vehicle with a fantastic audio system and a lot of room on the inside, check out the ADX. If you want better performance, better 0 to 60 performance, more driving dynamics, etc., then you will have to look towards some of those other options. Just be prepared to take a lot more money to the dealer with you because they're going to be significantly more expensive than this Acura. And not just to buy. They're probably also going to be more expensive to maintain and insure long term. Maintenance costs, reliability costs, unexpected repairs, etc., are probably going to be less likely in the ADX than the Volvo, the Audi, the BMW, not to mention something like the Alfa Romeo Tonale. I did say two things, right? Here's the other thing that I would change. I would add the 2-motor hybrid system to the ADX. I suspect it would fit under the hood. You could probably fit the battery under the rear seats, and it could give this a 0 to 60 time of around 6 to 6.5 seconds. In the Honda Civic, the hybrid is quicker 0 to 60 than the Civic Si. And that would mean if it was in the ADX, it would have the 0 to 60 time to back up the aggressive looks that we find up front. See all of you later.